Seriously? A magic pill?
Yes, desalination is the magic pill.
Oh, come on.
Yes, believe me.
Okay, that deep dive will be very controversial because I fully disagree with that guy. But right before we go into that, hi Björn, how
Hello
are you?
Antoine, I'm very fine. Welcome to Germany, first time, right?
Yeah, first time for a regular show, and I have to say, yeah, it's quite nice. Not as nice as friends, of course, but quite nice. Today we are starting with your editorial, and what is it about?
Well, that the industry, the water industry, thinks about itself as a little bit too important, as it already is.
So we are less important than what we think?
Yes, a little bit.
Oh, I'd like to discuss that one with you. For me, in my top 3, I'm going into topics linked to energy, to carbon, to what we're seeing right now in the world and the link that may have with wastewater. So if you're intrigued, I'm looking forward to discuss that with you, but seriously, Björn.
Yeah, come on, desalination. Yes, it is, believe me.
Never. So welcome to the main section of the show, and that starts, you get used to it, with the editorial from Björn. I have no clue what he will be rambling around. All I know is that he will be wrong. That's the perfect way to launch you, Björn, so the scene is yours.
You told me a minute ago, this time you want to agree with me.
Yeah, I'm a liar. You should know that.
Typical French, right? Typical French. No, this month, I want to talk about that. I feel that we as water industry take ourselves as too important, and we as industry, we don't have any intention to solve the water problem. Don't get me wrong. We have all the technologies to solve all the water issues we have, to solve all the challenges we are faced to. But my feeling is, we are just a supplier for an industry, for another industry. So that means we develop solutions, we develop technologies, and in the end, we give that to another industry. For instance, to the process industry. And they have to implement that. And we all the time thinking about like circular economy, thinking about wastewater reuse, all these things, right? But in the end, isn't that the fact that even our end customer from this perspective need to think about that, need to talk about that? You know, I came with that idea some months ago. Remember in Frankfurt? We met Icarus and we talked to him, and he said clearly, live on camera, he said, wastewater plant, wastewater treatment, is an issue, but it doesn't bring any money. So they don't care. This was just one opinion, but let's say if you walk the floor to all the industries, you get really the feeling, okay, yes, we are a supplier for something, but they don't get any money out of that. We are there, we are supplying technology, we are supplying an installation to treat their water, to treat their wastewater, but we are not as important as we all think all the time. And furthermore, I was thinking, we as industry, yes, we don't really want to solve the global water issues. And I came with that due to the fact, last month there was a stakeholder consultation, the second second time from the UN Water Conference.
Don't tell me you were in that conference.
No, I were not.
Okay.
I were not in that conference. But I checked.
Sidetrack, I was in, and that was boring as hell.
The point is, I checked the agenda, and you was free to give any topic you want. You could place on the agenda, and I checked all the companies, or let's say all the stakeholders who placed a topic. Guess what? Out of hundreds, I found 3 water companies only.
Okay, so there's a reason for that. It's that simply they do. It's like, when you go to a nightclub, there's someone outside the nightclub who decides who goes in, and that they did the same here. Because I tell you, I wanted to go in, and they told me, no.
But you could place a topic on the agenda.
You could try, but they decide
no.
what...
Suez did, BioAzul did, and I found a third one.
Okay, so you gave the people who will be on the agenda always because they're big enough.
All I'm saying is, BioAzul is a very small company. You haven't heard about that. It's a Spanish company. All I'm saying is that, let's say, if you really want to change this topic, how we proceed in future, how we solve the water challenges we have, why are we not more proactive? And guess what? I feel that every company is looking for having their solution to sell that to the market. Full stop. Sometimes they go a little bit further, but let's say in general.
That's where I need some definitions to understand you.
in general, let's say they just want to bring their technology, they see it as a business, and then they step back. So that's all I'm saying is...
Who's they? Who's this industry you're talking
about?
The
water industry.
Yeah, okay, but how do you define it?
The water industry, from pump supplier to an EPC, and everything what is in the middle.
So if I take back the pyramid, on the very bottom of it, you have like the suppliers, like GF Piping Systems. We supply parts. We're part of this industry because we are suppliers. So that would be the bottom of what you're looking at. Then you have the OEMs, integrators, OEMs, up to EPCs. Exactly. But you don't consider like consultants, end users, or industrial players. Those would be outside of what you define as the water industry.
I mean, consultants are a different game, but let's say to who we, deliver the solutions are, let's say, our end clients. And they are not part of the water industry because they are process industry, they are municipalities, they are communities, whatever.
It's a way to define it. I just want to be clear about that.
If it is industry, then we produce as industry. We are not part of the automotive industry just because we are driving a car. Right, so it's the same. It's the same with the water utilities or with the water industry end clients. Okay, so that's what I'm saying, and
that's where I disagree with you. But okay,
and that's what I've seen is, and let's say finish the point. During the stakeholder consultation, only 3 companies I found. So we always claim that we want to solve the global water challenge, but there is not really a proactive way in doing that, and that's why I think our industry takes ourselves a little bit too important, as we aren't.
Okay. I will need you to come to a conclusion as well on that. But before coming to the conclusion, I'd like to tell you why I disagree with you. The reason why I disagree is you're saying we don't want to solve it. And I'm not debating that. I would say the industry wants or needs us to solve it. And that's different because you're taking that industry as outside. But let's take...
But it is outside. It is outside. That is what we have.
If you look at Frankfurt. Look at many countries, look at what's happening right now. First, in terms of regulations, you have, like, if you're a mining site, you have more and more these rules of 120% water. Meaning, if you're a mining site, which is then doing something which has nothing to do with water, the laws in many countries tell you that you have to produce 100% of your water plus 20% of your water, which you give back to the community. Which means that the mining site becomes like a water utility. You might say that's an exception, but that's also true in microelectronics. When they are in the middle of a desert, they have to be their own water utility. So that is also something which is quite important. And then you have the full ESG drive, which means that when ESG money...
Don't come with ESG.
When ESG... Yeah, but that's a controversial topic, but that's part of the topic, because when ESG money comes and tells you have to be water cautious, then all of a sudden every industry becomes like water cautious, because if they don't get money. It's kind of a virtuous circle on one end. It's kind of bullshit blue washing on the other hand, let's be fully honest as well. But what I want to say with that is that somehow those two incentives, regulation and money, pushes those people back into the water industry.
Yeah, but this has nothing to do with us as industry, as I see that.
That's the way you define us,
right?
Which to me is kind of restrictive.
But
because
we learned in Frankfurt that we have the process industry. We serve the process industry, or we serve all the industries with our technologies or installations.
I came up with the process industry in Germany, which is kind of the conservative way to do business.
Just the world leading, right? Congress for the process industry.
But you discuss with a German company active in Germany, which is probably true in Germany, whatever they said. I'm just debating the fact that in other places where it's a bit less built in silos.
So that would mean you would define a microelectronic industry, or let's say a fab plant, which will be built, for instance, here in Germany very soon in Magdeburg. They are a water company. They belong to a water industry. Don't say that.
I'm not saying that the full...
No, we are serving them in giving them the technologies and the way forward that they can have the water they need to produce.
That the full factory is part of the water industry, but you cannot just exclude them and say that we are sub-supplier. That's not true.
We are.
No.
Yes.
No. They have to be cautious of their water. It's a must. They cannot... I mean, in the past, they maybe were something outside because they were just saying, okay, I need water. I take so and so much cubic meter and that's it. But more and more, if you have these regulations in place in being cautious about water, if you have this push about recycle that much amount of water and then you'll get ESG money. If not, then your ESG score is too low and you have a problem. Then they have to be part of it. And they have ESG committees and they have people looking for that. Maybe they're doing it for the wrong reasons, but still they are doing it. And I wouldn't exclude them from the equation like you do. I mean, that's restrictive.
I mean, it's the same in Frankfurt. We talked about, let's say, circular economy. We said, hey, the entire water industry is talking about circular economy. What can we do with wastewater? How can we process? And so on and so on. The industry itself, they don't care. Most of them, they don't care. I mean,
a portion of them doesn't care.
So
maybe the majority says how it's an afterthought, but still, I would say there's the same amount of people which are early movers than the one you define as they don't care. So it's like a balance. You have a lot of people in between.
No, but shouldn't we bring our clients into the process to think about what to do in future?
Why has Nike responsible for water? Why has Amazon a full team dedicated to water? Why has Apple, Facebook, and all the likes some people dedicated to water? Because more and more they recognize water to be on the critical path on whatever they produce. So to them, they treat water as a risk. And if they treat water as a risk, that means they need people to solve for it. And then there are two ways to solve for it. The first is to say, hey, look, I have sub-suppliers and they deal with it, which is what you explain. And I'm thinking that more and more they take a more clever approach, which is to say, let's do everything as a team. Let's look at ways to optimize that and to have a full ownership of the full process.
I mean, you named 3 out of the 4 big companies we have right now, right? But let's say these are examples which are, let's say, far away. Think about all the, let's say, the mid-sized companies. They don't have dedicated teams.
No.
They don't have that. And they cannot afford that. And they don't see themselves as part of the industry. They see themselves as part of the metal industry, part of the chemical industry, because they have to sell the product. They have to earn the money with that. Yeah. So that means we are supplying just some kind of water or a technology that they can go on.
That's the part where I think you're wrong. We're not just suppliers. If we were just suppliers, then it means we're still in the 90s and we still have a problem, because we are supposed to be part of that team, and the water awareness, not for the man in the street, but the water awareness among the corporates.
Okay, but back to the consultation. Why only 3 companies? I mean, there were five groups: water for health, water for development, water for climate, resilience and environment, water for cooperation, water for action decade.
Because the way
hundreds of topics.
The way that conference is set up is just crazy. I've been in 2 preparation calls hoping that I could at some point maybe even write a question, but even that, I didn't come to that, because you need to qualify for that, and you need to fill 20, 30 pages. So you're really taking like an outlier and saying that's the rule. It's not the case.
But shouldn't we be more active? Shouldn't we be more present? If we as pros, as water pros, wants to support to solve the water issue we have?
That water conference is
a stakeholder consultation.
It's the biggest event we are supposed to have over 50 years, and it's happening next year in March. And honestly, the closer we get to it, the more disappointed I am about it just in advance. I mean, it's organized by the Embassy of the Netherlands in cooperation with the Embassy of Indonesia, when it's supposed to be the thing organized by the United Nations. And then when you're inside that call, it's full of people who are like, yeah, I have that very specific problem in that very specific place. What can I do about it? Yeah, I thought we were supposed to take an helicopter view and to take some global approaches. So that is an entire different topic, which I'm really happy to take on that microphone, because I was shocked by that process, honestly. And I'm still very shocked about that process. But you cannot just take that 100 and say,
no,
3
true.
companies.
But we as industry, shouldn't we take the ownership and say, well, we are the pros, we have the solutions, we will support you in a better way. So come to us, or let's say be proactive, and we as industry go over there.
Should we maybe not? I don't know. Honestly, I don't have an opinion on that. So
the point is, the industry is not interested in doing that.
Because of this 80-20, where do you put your efforts which bring the maximum yield? Do you think that if all the water companies were to try to crash that process and to be in that stakeholder meeting, would it change much for our industry? I fear not. So I wouldn't tell them wrong.
You know why you see all the NGOs there? They don't need to be so profitable as, let's say, a private company. And that's why they can focus on that. The private companies in our water industry, they need to ensure that they sell the products, right, to get money. That's the nature of business. The NGOs, which are, let's say, the major companies which are part of the consultation process, they don't need that. And that's why they are there.
I really think you're taking a weird lens to analyze an epiphenomenon, because NGOs talk to governments.
True.
That's not really new.
But if you really want to solve, but if you really want to solve that, why you do not talk to the industry? If we are the pros, why nobody is doing that? And why, as industry perspective, we are not proactively going there?
80-20 rule. There was this conference in Mar del Plata in 1977, and the water industry was involved. And what did it change? Nothing. So maybe they realized when there was the next conference in 82 and 83, and then in the water. I mean, you don't want to
So what you are saying is that we are depressed and we don't want, as industry, and we don't want to go there.
We are looking at ways to be efficient, and that is not a way to be efficient. That conference
So what is a way then to be efficient to solve the global water issue? If not, if you go to the UN, because they should have the helicopter view.
It is that good old startup rule. The idea is nothing. The only important thing is the execution. And I think the private sector has an expertise, and the water industry has an expertise in the execution. And so I do hope, and I have examples for that we are currently executing on the promise, and that we are really doing that. Like, there's a company who has this 120-person rule. Cool, fine, we support as a water industry. There's a company who has that pressure of ESG. Cool, we support as an industry. And you have many companies within the water sector which are saying, okay, before we go to all the other companies and push them to do something which they maybe don't want to, we walk the talk. That's what Xylem does. That's what Evoqua does. That was where they have these rules of recycling the entire water. It's nothing on the scale of the planet, but they are saying, look, we are able to do it. So if we are able to do it, then everybody shall. And I think that is much stronger as a message as just going to the United Nations and doing the good old.
So that means you're saying
water is everything.
That means that the coverage,
water is
the coverage, what Xylem is doing is bigger. What they do, for instance, with Manchester United,
Absolutely.
as a UN, what they do. So
yes.
what you're saying, UN is bullshit. We can.
No, I'm not saying
away.
UN is bullshit. That's why I was trying to be involved in that process somehow. And don't get me wrong, I'm not whining. It's just I do get why they don't want me to be part. I'm just nothing in that word. I'm just saying that when I see people like Mina Guli struggling to win the agenda while she was advocating for it for the past 15 years more than arguably anyone in this world, I'm thinking, to whom are we really giving the torch or the microphone? So I still want to have like an open heart to that conference, and I still hope that there will be real enlightening moment in that conference. But to me, the decisive battle happens in the month after that conference. Because the conference will come and all the media attention of all the people who never talk about water will be on that water conference, because, hey, come on, the United Nations did something for the first time in 50 years since that Mar del Plata one. And they will come with a lot of problems and then maybe some solutions.
So do you really believe that there's an outcome out of that? Which will help?
Yeah, I believe that the companies of the water industry, the one you mentioned that don't want to solve the problem, that's, in my opinion, not true. I think they have a unique opportunity in that month after to say, look, they have been preparing all of that, and we were not really involved in the preparation, but we have been preparing ourselves on our specific side, and here are our solutions which we're proposing. You've been identifying the problem. Awesome, that's your job. We are the professionals, we come with the solutions, and then we have a good encounter of those two words around the conference, but not during the conference.
But I don't believe that. I think maybe big companies are able to do so. I mean, you mentioned Xylem, we talked about Veolia. We know that Veolia, for instance, has these kind of people who are going to the government. But let's say all other companies, which are smaller than them, no chance. I don't think so.
Not alone, but if they team up, I think there's...
But I don't see that they team up.
I'll give you an example. Currently, with GF, what we are doing, what I started with a team inside GF is that we said, okay, we will not be as GF at the United Nations. Nobody will invite us. We are too small for that. Our 2 billion turnover doesn't count on that stage. But we can go to all the OEMs, 200 people companies around the world, which we know which are our customers, and say, look, they will be saying that we still miss a lot of the water. They will be saying that SDG 6 is progressing at a quarter of the speed it should to reach the goal by 2030. So we know the problems that we identify. So whether we sit on our hands and we say, oh, poor world, and again, we missed the goal, or we come with solutions, doesn't mean that the solutions will necessarily work or necessarily be executed, but at least we can say, look, you have the problems, here is our proposal as a solution. And what we want to do is we want to write like a white paper or to have a conference just after and saying, they identified problem, we propose solutions. And then if you don't take our solutions, then fine. But if it doesn't work, what you try to do, then don't come to us and say we didn't do our part, because we are doing our part. And what we are doing right now is like, I see that as an open source project. I just wanted to start that, so I started it. But whoever wants to join the cause, and whoever even wants to lead the cause, saying like, GF, you're not the one who's supposed to lead. I don't intend to lead. I intend to be part of it. So I think that's how we should be doing that. And like the hummingbird, I intend to do my part. And if all the hummingbirds in the water industry do their part, then even if the governments screw up once again...
Sure. But the point a little bit is, I don't see that. I mean, it's a nice initiative you're leading here. I mean, is it a personal thing?
I had some colleagues and we sat together and says, okay, why do we have a voice in that? Do we have ideas? Yes, we have. So
okay, But it's an interesting and, let's say, very promising approach. And hopefully you will find some players who jump onto your board.
You've been talking with many people in all the conferences, and you see how the people in this industry, they have a drive. And then, of course, if you look at the bigger scale of it, it's like not that much happens and everybody says it's a conservative industry. But if you take the people one by one, I couldn't identify some individual people who were conservative and doing nothing. I see people with a drive which don't have
I don't see many people I don't see so many people with a drive.
Really?
I see people with a drive, yes, definitely, but I see more people who, let's say, are in this industry and say, well, I'm in this industry, I don't care about water.
Really?
Yes, and it is a job as anything else. Go to each conference, talk to the people. Yes, there are people who are passionate about that. Yes, there are people who want to see the water industry as North Star, but there are more which are saying, well, I get some money for that.
We all know that the water industry is not the best paying industry.
I don't care.
So if you don't have a drive, then what do you do in that industry? I mean, go out and work in the tobacco industry. They're looking for, there are a lot of jobs in the tobacco industry right now, and you're going to make money.
I think I made the poll.
Or go to oil and gas. You're going to make money.
I think I made the poll some time ago, a year ago or 2 years ago. I made the poll somewhere on LinkedIn, and the majority was really saying, well, yes, I am in the industry because I'm in the industry. I'm not in the industry because I want to solve the world. I want to solve water. I'm here because I'm passionate about water.
First, I'm sad about that. And second, do you think maybe that has changed with the lockdowns, with coronavirus and everything? Because people now, and it's a generational thing as well, want to have a meaning in what they do. And honestly, there's so much of a cool meaning in being in the water industry that I cannot imagine people just don't giving a shit.
I can give you a personal example. I mean, I met a couple of people who wanted to work with me, right, for my company, and I told them, hey, I mean, if you want to do some meaningful, yes, I'm in the water industry. And then they found, in the first place, they found that idea very cool. But in the second place, then they identified how the industry is.
You're in the marketing of the water industry, that's specific.
That doesn't matter. But there are people who say, well, I want to do something meaningful. And meaningful means, okay, we do something for the environment. And water, well, I mean, you can't do more, right? We know that because we are both passionate. But they said, okay, yes, it's cool, I want to do that. And then they looked into the industry and then they identified, okay, it's a little bit boring. And so they jumped away. So yes, I hear that all the time, that they all want to do something meaningful. Yeah, okay, maybe I'm 43. I'm a little bit the edge of that from that age. But I don't see that so much, honestly.
I fear that you might be right for some generations, for some people.
I'm not saying about all. We both especially know people who are really passionate about that.
To me, it's
but to
you need a flag, you need a cause, and then you can rally for that.
But the point is always, I mean, we are talking to people who want to talk about that they are passionate about that. You will never have someone on your microphone who's just someone, let's say, number 15 in the company and is selling a product because he don't want to talk to you and you don't want to talk to him. These people are more than the people who are, let's say, the leader or the drivers or whatever.
I have a certain level of cynicism to that extent. In the sense that I don't care what's your drive as long as you have a drive. So if your drive is you're convinced about what I'm saying all the time, that water is a profitable business where you can be doing good money, by the way, as a byproduct doing good. But honestly, you can even wipe out the doing good because I'm convinced that whatever you do in the water industry, you're going to do good. So just concentrate on the money. There's a lot of economic opportunities out there. And if that's your drive, then all fine with me. I don't see the water industry as a 9-to-5 job.
Oh, there are so many who see that.
Honestly, even when I was doing my last internship on a wastewater treatment plant before becoming an engineer, I was working with 4 guys. And these 4 guys were it was a 60,000 population equivalent plant. So they had a lot of stuff to do. So you could think that those guys were going to have a 9-to-5, but they didn't. They were like, what happens if I don't grease the pump? Who will notice? Nobody. But they were like, if I don't grease the pump and then it doesn't work, then the sludge extraction doesn't work and people might be having sludge in their basement and they will hate me for that. And so their drive was, there's a community, I need to serve my community. And that's a drive. And they didn't care about the environment. That's not the driver they had. But their driver was, I want to help my community. And I'm absolutely sure that Not everybody, because the word is not perfect.
But let's say, let's agree there is more air for the industry and for the people in the industry to come to the next level.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that's the case, because that means we can still move something. If not, it's boring. It's like, hey, it's a perfect word. If it's a perfect word, I move out. You don't need me anymore in that industry. I go do something else.
Okay. And next year we go to New York, to the UN?
It is in tentative on my agenda, in the sense that I have the feeling it is a big event. I agree with you. I just have a weird gut feeling about it. It sounds like,
I don't get the industry there. I don't see the industry, and that's what drives me crazy.
To me, it's a bit like the Cannes Festival. If you really are into movies and cinema, the most interesting part of the Cannes Festival is not the Cannes Festival, is all the side events happening in Cannes during the Cannes Festival. And I expect that conference in New York to be a bit that way. The same like I was in New York some weeks ago, and I was at the Rethinking Water conference, and the Rethinking Water conference was like a byproduct, and the coolest byproduct ever, but a byproduct of the Sustainable Development Week and the Environment Week at the United Nations in New York. So a lot of people gathering, and then Columbia Water thought, hey, we should be doing Rethinking Water. And then all these brilliant minds were there anyways, and it was one of the most thoughtful conference ever. And that's my hope for March 2023, that because anyways, there's this big fuzz in the United Nations where probably neither you nor me will be invited. Maybe there are brilliant minds which are wanting to gather next to it, and that's our place.
Well, let's have some hope here.
But that was a very cool editorial. So that's your conclusion.
That's what I've seen, right? That, I mean, as I said in the beginning, we see ourselves a little bit too important, and we are not really driving, or let's say striving, to solve the issues.
So for the people watching us, if you feel like you're these people who want to drive it forward, then we are nobody to gather people. It's about building a community of people who are like-minded and then create that movement. So if you feel like you're one of the leaders who wants to take over, fine, we can be the connectors. And I really hope that we assemble one way or the other to bring our messages forward. Let's discuss that further in my top 3. So this time you'll notice that it's not rigged, because we have a top 3 which is very different from the editorial, but maybe we find a middle way about it. Actually, my top 3 this month is about a problem we're seeing in the world right now. We have this problem with energy, and everything becomes expensive. Energy becomes expensive, and we're looking at ways to find other sources of energy and being maybe greener in the approach, find alternative sources. That's one thing. And on the other end of that spectrum, we have the carbon topic, which is still somewhere in our minds. We have to reduce our carbon impact. Yeah, the world focuses on taking less planes, and every time you take a plane, you're like, oh, I'm guilty because I take a plane. And nobody looks at the water industry so far, but I'm repeating that now for a while. At some point, they will come for us, and the day they come for us, we better be ready. So we have these 2 elements of energy and carbon. And if you remember, one of my first top 3s was about new ways to desalinate water, and I was giving things which might be in the future, like microbial desalination
waves and things like that.
And that is like prospective, really cool, but that's in the future. Today, my top 3 is about 3 proven solutions to have more of an energy efficiency in our plants and to be more self-sustaining and reducing carbon. And that has a lot to do with the wastewater treatment, and that has a lot to do with the way we do biogas out of this wastewater treatment. My number 3 actually is simply start doing biogas. Because if you look at the numbers, you mentioned the SDG 6 in your editorial. In terms of full coverage in wastewater treatment, we are still not at the level we should be. Today, 56% of the wastewater in the world is treated. So that's already 44% of the wastewater which is simply not treated. But among this 56% of wastewater which is treated, only 15% have a stage of biogas production, so anaerobic digestion. So that means 15% of 56%, which is about 8 or 9%. So that is the level of equipment we have right now, which is pretty low.
So you're saying every wastewater treatment plant should have a biogas treatment?
At least every wastewater treatment plant of a certain relevant size. I've been discussing with companies which claim that relevant size doesn't really exist, that you could have efficient digestion from really 500 population equivalent, but that again is quite prospective. Let's say we focus on all the 20,000 population equivalent and higher, all of those, arguably, it is economic today to have a digestion step. And not all of them have it. That's one thing. Not all of them have primary decantation either, which is also a way to have better sludge, which makes more biogas. So really, I do believe all the ones which have this relevant size, from the get-go when they're built, when we equip them, they should have a digestion step. And it's not going to cover 100% of their energy needs, but it's better than nothing. And all that methane or biogas which gets produced in that stage is so much less, which gets like evaporated to the atmosphere, which is first a stupid waste of energy, but it's also a big burden on the environment because methane has this 28 times higher greenhouse gas effect than CO2. So yes, I would say that we need to have this biogas, biomethane production step in every wastewater treatment plant.
I would say there would be a lot of many engineers would disagree with you because it doesn't make sense all the time, because it's always on, let's say, what is the COD level, what is the BOD ratio, and so on and so on. That is where it comes to the technical thing. Then you must overcome this level. Otherwise, from a technical perspective, it doesn't make any sense. And furthermore, you have to think about, for instance, hardness. Hardness is a huge topic for a biodigester. If your water is too hard, I mean, you can handle that, technically speaking. But let's say if you go into that, you have to have a solution for that as well. So it's a lot of capex you just have to spend also. I mean, to put a basin and aerate that is pretty simple and easy. For sure, you have the OPEX, but let's say from the capex perspective, it is high intensive cost to do so.
You want to tell me that the 85% of the existing wastewater treatment plant who don't have anaerobic digestion is only because of hardness and...
No. I'm just saying from the technical perspective. I'm just speaking about the technical perspective. You should consider that as well. Not every COD-BOD ratio makes sense for biogas treatment. That is nonsense. But you can, for sure, there are many more. You cannot have 85%. You cannot equip them all. That is totally bullshit.
We can.
But you can have more.
We can.
Out you have now.
Totally
no,
can.
It doesn't make any sense. If your ratio is too low, then it doesn't make sense.
You can, and that's why it's a top 3 and not the top 1. Because my number 2 is whenever you have a sludge which is hard to digest or which you want to increase the yield. I mean, we should always go for these treatments like hydrolysis, thermal hydrolysis, or ultrasonic hydrolysis. I mean, to really ease up that digestion. And that is available. That is available for decades now. Can be has opened the way, but you have also Tomorrow Water, which is doing the same. You have also Veolia, who had a subdivision doing that. And in my now a bit older times, as I mentioned that wastewater treatment plant I was working on, my last internship was about having ultrasonic hydrolysis of sludge. It didn't work. Don't do it with ultrasounds. It's not the best way. But if you do thermal hydrolysis, that works absolutely like a charm. And that means you can have a much higher yield for your biogas treatment, which makes a lot of sense. It's all about return on investment. You're right. It's more capex. But I'm absolutely sure there's a return on investment. It's just not my conviction. It's the facts who show it. And if your sludge is hard to digest, or if you're absolutely right, there's some technical limitations to the way your water is set up, and you have really a very, very hard COD ratio compared to the BOD, but that means you're really on an industrial site, which is very specific. Still, you can have these processes which bring a bit more life into your sludge, and which is starting this digestion a bit earlier and making it more efficient.
Okay.
Hey, what's your counter argument to that?
My counter argument to that is, I mean, you're talking all the time about sludge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know that there was in Nova a couple of years ago in Germany. Do you have to treat, let's say that you have to process the sludge in a separate way?
I don't know, because you mentioned it one show out of 2.
Never ever, I never mentioned that. But the point is, the only technology how they treated sludge is not that they pre-treat it and then they give it to the digester. No, everything goes to a furnace. It's incinerated. And even the incinerator can create some energy out of that. So what you're saying is that we should have decentralized solution. We should have every wastewater treatment plant should have its own biogas treatment plant. And if the sludge is not able, then we should have some kind of hydrothermal process upfront instead of going to a centralized solution. Is that what you're saying?
Not fully. I'm saying that every single sludge should be transformed into biogas. It doesn't have to be all the time directly on site. It's just that for the sake of transportation, it might be difficult to concentrate everything in a central place. But still, you should have, because you're mentioning incineration. And yeah, when you burn something, you take something out. But come on. Sludge out of a treatment plant. If you take it from the dewatering step, it's 1.5% sludge and 98.5% water. And spoiler, water doesn't burn that well. Okay, you go into a filter press, everything, you go out with a 6CT of maybe 23, 24%, which is still 76% water, and water still doesn't burn that well. So then what do? You go to thermal drying, then you do a double drying, and you get these very nice pellets which you can burn. And how many energy did you spend in creating those pellets?
But then you have proven the entire German market totally wrong. because everything now, from now on, will go to more or less, not everything, but let's say more or less everything will go really to incineration.
Not everything, first, because Germany has a lot of primary decantation.
That's what I'm saying. But let's say in future...
And why Germany all the time? It's not because Germans do weird stuff that we all have to do weird stuff as well.
No, I'm just saying, okay, if you want to have a decentralized solution, you want to have hydrothermal analysis, or let's say a process upfront, and then you want to have a biogas even on a 5,000 PE plant.
I said 20,000 plus.
Okay.
Because you have right now people in the water industry who say that they can be really efficient from
makes no sense. Even 20,000 PE means that. No,
sense.
Then you have to have a centralized one.
No.
That makes even more sense.
No.
That makes more sense.
Okay.
Because scale effect. Yeah. That is all about. So if you have 10 or 20 in one region, and everyone has to have a kind of biogas production, it doesn't make any sense. Then you go to the next step, and that's what happened, for instance, right now with all the sludge when it goes to the incineration. They don't build 200 or 500 or 1,000 new incineration for the sludge. No, what they do, they have centers. They have 40 approved plants all over Germany where this goes to, and that is a kind of decentralized approach, because it doesn't make any sense that every wastewater treatment plant has to have this thing.
Okay, so it makes much more sense to have all these wastewater treatment plants filling up trucks, which then drive on the roads and go to. I mean, you want to truck sludge around. That's a better solution for you.
Much more economical. Much more, doesn't make any sense to build on each and every plant a biogas treatment.
That's because you're not looking at the right way to have the scale effect, and that's my number one. The right way to have the right scale effect is who said that the wastewater treatment plant only has to deal with its sludge. Right now, you already have all the sludge, which is then mixed most of the time with the greases that you can collect around. But why stop at the greases? You have so much of the waste, not wastewater, so much of the waste which is organic. And if you were able to tap into that organic waste, then you can do the right mixture of solving the waste problem the same time that you solve the wastewater problem, and you bring everything on the central wastewater treatment plant, and the wastewater treatment plant also becomes the way to source this organic sludge which comes from the waste.
Are you now shifting from decentralized to centralized?
No, it's still, you call it decentralized because you want always to put things in buckets. I'm saying the wastewater treatment plant stay as they are. They have a digester which you build on it. And now when you're collecting the waste across the city, you bring that waste, when it's organic, also to the wastewater treatment plant. And then you co-digest it with your sludge. And if you do so, you create much more biogas.
What kind of waste you're talking about?
Household waste, like what you put in your trash bin at home.
So what goes now into the incineration? I should bring it to the, but then why not bringing the sludge to the incineration, which is already there? Is the other way around? Because
incineration is not as efficient as creating biogas. Biogas enables you to extract the most value out of that waste and wastewater, which is proven, which is what Energia does. And basically you have one digester, you take their Rialto facility in California, you have the digester as it is, you mix it with, they have some pre-treatment steps, but you mix it with the waste from the communities around, and you triple up the output with the same house, same building, same concrete. You have 3 times more output in terms of gas. And the beauty of that is that nobody wants to have a methanation in their background. It's really the NIMBY, not in my backyard. When I came here driving, I crossed a couple of small cities where they have the big panels saying,
it was in the middle of the night. I don't know how you have seen that.
But still, they don't want... And why don't they want that? Because it's smelly and it's a new thing. I have a scoop here and a big spoiler. Wastewater is already smelly. So people know that there's a wastewater treatment plant.
No. If wastewater smells, then something is wrong with the biology. That is what you learned in study, right?
On the wastewater treatment plant, come on, Björn, it always smells a bit.
But it is not really.
Always somewhere outside of the city.
If it is really smelling, then something is wrong.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Now you're saying that wastewater doesn't smell.
No, I'm just saying it.
If you want to debate that, okay, we can, but that's nonsense.
But it's not really smelling. If it really smells, yes, it has a smell, but it's not smelling. Call it this way.
What I'm saying is that we have these existing facilities, we have these existing departments. Like in a municipality, you would have the wastewater people, and you have the waste people, and they don't talk together. Bring them together and produce biogas.
But right now, we have the facilities to take the organic waste from the households, at least to make something out of that.
Make what? Compost?
Exactly. They compost most
which is
of
not
that.
that efficient, which releases a lot of methane to the atmosphere. So that's one thing. Or you bring it to a landfill, which happens in many cases and in many regulations happening right now, that regulation says, hey, stop, you stop with that. You better find another solution, but you stop with that. And that other solution is simple. You have these wastewater treatment plants, bring it to the digesters, do biogas out of it. And now your wastewater treatment plant is a decentralized power factory. It's creating small amounts, but it contributes.
For me, it's a thin ice here, right? To argument, because I don't want to say something wrong, but I'm pretty sure there are people out there, experts, who can prove you wrong. That doesn't work. You cannot.
Come to me. If you want to prove, come to me.
You cannot
Bring it on. Come on.
you cannot take just the organic waste from the households and put it into. No, it doesn't work.
You need a pre-treatment, but that's what Energy does.
Okay. So
that's why Andrew Benedict came out of his retirement and said, I can do something for this planet. And it works. It's proven to work.
Andrew Benedict was just bored, sitting at home
maybe,
with all the money.
Maybe, but still, it works.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm citing Energy because I know the case, but they're not the only one. Like I cited Camby, but they're not the only ones. What I'm saying is that what I presented last time was highly promising, and I would love for it to work, but it was prospective and someone in the future. What I'm saying here with these top 3 today is that we have an energy problem, we have a carbon problem, and we need to look for solutions. And guess what? Those solutions exist, and they can be implemented today. And maybe we find in 10 years that there's an even better solution, and then great, we upgrade to that even better solution. But we have a low-hanging fruit right there. Right there, just grab it and leverage it.
I can't believe that this really works and will be the future. But as I said, for me, it's an ice before saying something wrong here. I would leave it like it is.
Okay.
Even if I would love to go against that, but let's say it is
Björn
too hard for me to judge.
And that's fine, because I'm just presenting words. I don't have hard facts here. I don't have a study right here to show him. So it's fine. I get that you don't need to believe me. So if there are experts out there, I
will find some numbers.
And
I will shoot it at you.
If you have those numbers, we do a specific show around that, and we speak about exactly what we said in your editorial. Let's stop saying there are problems. Let's talk about solutions. Let's bring those solutions on the table and say, hey, this works with those limitations, maybe, but still it works. Why don't we do it? Deal?
Okay, deal.
And that being said, that was my top 3. Let's move to the main part.
With our market-leading brands at Aqseptence Group, we are a global supplier of specialized products and system solutions for filtration, separation, and water technology, building sustainable infrastructure. That's what we've been doing for decades. We at Aqseptence Group are united by our passion and our ambition to create innovative and long-lasting solutions for our customers in industries and municipalities, enabling our customers to protect the planet and its people by using our products. That's what drives us as a global team. We know that it's industries and municipalities that can make the biggest difference when it comes to the sustainable use of our natural resources. Guided by our values, protect, support, and enable, we are committed to supporting them in achieving their sustainability goals and enabling them to achieve even more. Let's build responsibility together.
Yeah, the main topic today is about desalination. I mean, we have seen over the last months a lot of conferences. Sydney, we have seen in Saudi Arabia, there was a big conference about desalination. And whenever it comes to a problem, it looks like that desalination is somehow the magic pill, right? For instance, look at right now, very recent, Saudi Arabia got the approval for the Winter Olympics. You have seen that?
Okay, not Winter Olympics, Asia Olympics 2029.
Okay, but
which is crazy.
Even then, they need the water, and even then, desalination is one of the solution drivers.
Yeah.
So we see really everywhere desalination. Looks like that really desalination is the magic pill to solve all the water issues we have. I mean, we have 2.2 million not having access.
2.2 billion.
2.2 billion not having really access to water. So desalination is a problem. So what are we talking about? So why can't we go at home? Everything is solved. That's done.
Actually, I think your framing is right. If you look at these 2.2 billion people, a lot of them live in coastal places. I mean, a good proportion of them live in coastal places. So let's just desalinate the hell of the water and of the seawater, and that solves it, because that way they have drinking water. The problem is that would be working if it wasn't for the problem of space. You don't have that much space to build desalination everywhere. Okay, you can overcome that one. How do you do with the energy, and who's going to pay for that? So yes, you're fully right. When we listen to people, it's like desalination will solve all the issues because, hey, it works. And sure, it works.
But the question, I mean, you're right. I mean, yes, the question is energy, and the other question, well, is brine somehow, right? How to overcome that? Well, we will come to that in a minute. But the point is right now, desalination is serving 300 million people with drinking water. So
okay.
300. It is a small number.
It's about 1% of the water worldwide.
To be very fair, but let's say I saw a study by the WWF in 2050. 51% of the global population will live in countries with water stress. So shouldn't we push?
Sounds low. Studies say it's even higher than that, but yeah.
But shouldn't we push as much as possible desalination if that is one of the drivers to solve the problem? I mean, 300 million, well, is nothing. But right now, just a couple of days ago, that was announced by the Guinness Book World of Records. Is it called that way? The biggest desalination plant is right now in Jebel Ali. 2.2 million cubic meters a day. Was announced October 18th. So
just because you can doesn't mean it's a good solution.
No, I'm not saying, but let's say what is the what would be the alternative? Let's say if it comes, you're saying, well, energy is an issue. Well, I agree. What is the alternative to serve 2.2 billion people and even more in future, because the population is growing, with drinking water?
Actually, it's a nonsense to say that you're going to cover 2.2 billion people just with desalination when today it's only 1% of a water source. If you take just water reuse today, it is addressing more of the water in the world than desalination, even though people would be much more happy to drink desalinated water than they would be happy to drink their neighbor's pee, even if it's treated. But if you look at the facts today, I think reuse, depending on the numbers, there's no official statistic about it, but it's about 3 or 4% of the water in the world, when desalination is just 1%. So I agree, we should be developing desalination. Sure, it's probably one part of the solution, but that's what it is. It is one part of the solution. It is not the solution.
But isn't that the most promising one? I mean, yes, you're right. I mean, no. even if we treat wastewater to drinking water, which is, we know that technically is absolutely possible. It is done in many countries and communities, and is even cheaper. We know that. But still,
you just demonstrated that it's a better solution.
No, I'm not saying it's a better solution, but still you have to overcome the hurdle that the people accept that.
Then first, do it with the right communication and not saying it's toilet to tap. And second, do it in a clever way, like what Singapore does, like saying, okay, I reuse my water, but don't worry, even it would be perfectly drinkable. Don't drink it straight away. We put it in the reservoir where it sits. It takes some light, some air and everything. And then it goes back into the treatment. I mean, Singapore does it with reservoir, but you can do it with groundwater recharge. But I'm not saying it's one against the other. I'm saying there's a study by the OCDE. Mm-hmm. The OCDE made a study, and they were looking at how do we overcome this gap we have in the water in the world. And they said, yes, desalination will be developed, and probably from 1% it goes to 2 or 3 or 4%, but water reuse goes from 3 or 4 to 9 or 10, and our water use in all the cities has to decrease from so much to so much, and we have to better treat our wastewater so that even if we don't go to reuse level, when we release it to the environment, then groundwater becomes drinkable and surface water stays drinkable, and so far and so on. So it's a set of all solutions, and I have a hard time. I mean, if you have a bunch of money, desalination is awesome.
Okay, but I don't have a bunch of money, but I know how to come to the point that desalination could be more affordable. Right now, what does desalination cost? Around 0.4 to 0.5 US dollar a cubic meter. That is somehow the range.
No.
Well, it is. It is. But you have to come to the point to...
No.
Yes.
No.
0.4 to 0.5 US dollar a cubic meter.
No.
Yeah, it is written in my notes.
It's not because it's written in your notes that it's right.
It is always right. But
the limits of thermodynamics is around $1 per cubic meter. So you're below the limits of thermodynamics, or you don't take it into account that you need to pump up that water, that you need to pre-treat it, that you bring it through an ultrafiltration. You're just taking the reverse osmosis.
I take just the desalination. That means the reverse osmosis process. I'm not...
Okay, so water comes from, like, someone comes with a magical wand, says, abracadabra, and water appears, and then you desalinate it. You don't need to pump it.
But what is it? Let's say, if you take the entire process, what is the most energy-consuming part? is the desalination that you put it through the reverse osmosis.
The entire
So
process
that
is $2 per cubic meter.
But
I mean, just take the right numbers and then we can discuss.
But the numbers for desalination is around, let's say for the reverse osmosis, call it this way. This is what I have figured out. Is 0.4.
Okay, so we live in an universe where thermodynamics don't apply anymore, and we can say whatever we want. Oh, it's okay. And then I have flying unicorns, which are then peeing water.
No, look at the tenders. Look at the tenders for what price they offer. The entire tender.
Not 0.4.
But okay. Let's have a deep dive again on the numbers, and let's bring that to the table. The point is, we need to come down with the energy cost to make desalination more affordable. So, and if we would come, for instance, to 0.1 or whatever kilowatt an hour per cubic meters, then it could be very, very interesting, and it could be a very affordable solution to serve even more people.
But what do you do with the limits of thermodynamics? Like really no joke this time. I mean,
no,
really, I mean, there is a bottom. You can decrease, but up to a certain level, at some point you reach the limit.
Antoine, we can have for 20 cent a kilowatt hour. We can treat with photovoltaic. We can run a reverse osmosis. This works. We have seen that, but the contractor is not able.
Where have you seen that?
In the Malays, where you will find all the photovoltaic installations.
20 cents per cubic meter.
Yes, that's what we need. But we have seen that it works, but the developer doesn't get the price.
Okay, so you're saying someone puts on the paper, we need to reach 20 cents?
No.
No. We need that because it's written on the paper. I can put you a paper with 10 cents.
No, that they sell it. They sell it to others, but not to the water industry. That's what I'm saying.
No, that's not possible, Björn.
It's
that's
true.
Nonsense.
It's true. I can prove that. I can prove that number wrong.
Oh, you better prove it.
I do.
Oh, you better prove it.
I do it.
If he is able to prove it, I will be the one editing. I promise, if he proves to me that he's right, I'm editing me for the rest of the entire show with the weird stuff on top of my head saying I'm stupid.
Okay.
Promise. I promise. So, to prove his point, Björn sent me 2 studies. Well, one study and one blog article. First, the study shows that it is possible to desalinate water for $0.5 to $0.6 per cubic meter. You're still not distributing that water, you're literally in the middle of the ocean, but it's desalinated, which is roughly what I suspected when he started coming up with weird numbers. The blog article circulates back to a couple of tenders in the Middle East where GWI extrapolated what it would really cost and what would be the cheapest desalinated water in the world, and there, effectively, they're reaching $0.4 per cubic meter. We're still far from the 0.1 or 0.2 Björn refers to, but indeed it is much lower than the $2 benchmark I was sharing myself. Now, there's a trick here as well. It's the cost of energy taken to come to that number. Indeed, for desalinated water to cost $0.4 per cubic meter, you need a kilowatt hour at $0.06. For the record, the average as I record this additional data in Europe is at $0.25, so 4 times higher. It's also at $0.17 in the US, so 3 times higher, and $0.07 in Saudi Arabia, so slightly over those 0.06. In conclusion, I'd still call Björn's 0.1 pure fantasy, but I can't decently put a weird thing all over his face when I'm about as wrong as him. For now, let's return to the deep dive. I'll make sure to do a specific video in the future to address the real cost of desalination, and the boundaries of what we measure here have a lot of importance. Drop us a comment if you'd be interested in that.
But anyway, if energy is the issue, if we bring the energy to another level in terms of cost, isn't desalination an affordable solution which is, let's say, more interesting as it is right now to serve the 2.2 billion and even more people, even in future?
I think, as always, Björn, you're a person of black and white.
Absolutely.
And I think
I'm not saying it's the only one solution. I'm not saying it's the only. Listen to my question. To help to come to the point that we don't have 2.2 billion people anymore lacking to have access to water.
The reason why people are lacking access to water has little to do with the availability of water. Most of the time, water is available somewhere. Mm-hmm. It's just not treat it at that somewhere, and often that somewhere doesn't imply having to desalinate the water. It's an infrastructure problem, and it's the way we address it. So I would really uncouple those two things. There's one thing which is water availability, and there's one other thing which is how do we deal with the overall water balance, because we do know that we are missing some water to reach a balance by 2040. Okay, so is desalination part of the solution? Yes. Will desalination even double, triple, or quadruple up? Probably. Is it the magical pill that solves everything? Of course not, by far. Because there's energy, which we've discussed, and we disagree, and maybe right now, on top of my head, there's something saying I'm stupid, and if that's the case, then I apologize, Björn, you're very, very right, but if not, I'm not sure what's on top of your head right now. But there's the next problem, which is the brines. What do you do with the brines?
Good question, but even there, we will find a solution, because you know what I believe? Tell me one product or technology we can't use anymore, for instance, due to the fact that we don't have the resources anymore. There is nothing like that. So what does it mean? That I believe in engineers and scientists, that they will find a solution for the problem if it really becomes a problem.
Okay, so now let me show you some reports from the 70s or 80s made by oil and gas companies.
You wasn't born at that age, right?
I'm able to read things which were written before my birth.
Okay.
And those reports show that they were aware that climate change was a thing, and that if they continued to emit like they would, there would be a climate problem. And still they continued because that was making money. Okay, now put that on one side of the story. And on the other side of the story, now we have the brines, which we say, oh, yeah, maybe it's not that good for the ecosystem where we release those brines, but hey, we need that water because that poor little kid there is just dying because doesn't have drinking water. So
but isn't that the same what you guys do in France with your nuclear power? You produce nuclear power and then you take the material and you store it somewhere underground.
Do you really right now want to talk nuclear power?
No, I don't want to do that, but it's a hot topic right now between Germany and France. But anyway, but it's the same. Isn't that the same analogy? Right now, I mean, from the nuclear power, we produce the power because we need the power. Oh, yes, there's a byproduct. What to do with that? We put it somewhere under the ground. Yes. So it's the same with a brine. What happened with a brine? Okay, we bring it back to the ocean because then
your energy is somewhat right.
It's somehow diluted.
Your energy is somewhat right, and I've seen people explaining to me that the dilution level means that it is nothing, and they are right. If you take the overall scale, you take the entire amount of salt water in the sea, and you take this very tiny little amount of salt which we put back into the sea, it's absolutely right that it's nothing compared to the big masses. The problem is that, to my knowledge, that's not a big steering thing in the middle of the ocean, which is just mixing very evenly the ocean so that at any time when you release some brines, it's really mixing up and so that the overall salinity doesn't move. So the problem with that is that most of the ecosystems and the marine life doesn't live in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of nowhere. There is some life, but not as much as on the coastal side. So what we are doing when we are destroying that ecosystem with that too high level of brines on those coastal parts of our world is that we are reaching a point where we are breaking an equilibrium. And I am by no means an oceanographer. So I'm going to say really things which are more stupid than me. So take it for what it is. But what I've seen is that there are many studies who show you that there's a curve. Because when you're deforesting Amazon, everybody understands it's a bad thing because you're seeing those trees which are chopped and you say, oh, those trees are supposed to take the carbon, so we have a problem. But in fact, long before those trees, we have the oceans with the phytoplankton, which is less absorbing so much and doing all that work of absorbing the carbon. And after an equilibrium, they don't do it anymore. And it's not like they do it slightly or they do it a bit less. It's like there's a curve. And exactly like when you do a titration in chemistry, which is like blue, 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 and the one drop makes it red. Exactly the same here. If we do one drop too much, then the oceans don't work anymore as a way to absorb the carbon. And then, pardon my French, but we are fucked. And we are fucked in a level which is hard to consider. So aren't we playing a very dangerous game with those brines? Like if we say, let's desalinate the hell out of that water and bring it back to the coastal and just destroy everything because, people need to drink. They can drink for a while. When we have no planet anymore, we have a big problem.
But the planet will not go.
Oh, the planet will be fine.
The planet will be fine.
The humans won't.
To be very clear.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, sorry.
But why, okay, if it comes to that point, why is the desalination industry inside our water industry the biggest group? Instead, if
is it? Who said it was?
It's my feeling.
Okay, it's your feeling.
It's my feeling in terms of conferences, in terms of people are talking about, in terms of groups you can find, something really like that.
I would guess, but that's really guesswork.
Whenever you see stupid example, but if you see a desalination conference or training or whatever, you have hundreds of people attending, and if you have something about wastewater, it's just a minority of that. That
really guesswork, but my guess would be that a desalination project nowadays is a very, very large project, which means that you can draw the attention of thousands of people for one big project. Wastewater, you have a wastewater treatment plant in every city. So it's like the thing where 2, 3, 4 guys are working. It's not the kind of, if there are 3 working on the plant, there's not one of the 3 who says, hey guys, today I'm not greasing the pump, I'm going to a conference. That doesn't happen, never. So that's maybe the reason why you have this tropism for these big projects, big plants, which I fully get, and which makes sense, because that's the way that, if you look the way the desalination industry has gone over the past decades, it's crazy. 20, 30 years ago, we were doing thermal desalination, and today we have reverse osmosis, which become the market standard, and it's much better, no debate. But it's not because we have this shiny object that it is the all and everything pill, and that we should necessarily go after it and say, because it shines more than the rest, it must be a better solution.
Okay, so what is your you having these magic crystal ball, right? So how do you see desalination in 10, 15 years? Because then we have almost reached 2050.
I think it's about places. At the places where desalination is quite big nowadays, it's going to be much bigger
desalination
again.
makes only sense at the coast, right? I think we agree on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
but
first of all,
I think it also makes only sense in places where you have no other choices. Like if you go to the Middle East, of course you have to desalinate. If you go to Australia, of course you have to desalinate.
But you know that number 3 in desalination is the US.
Yeah, but that's where you have some limits. I visited a desalination plant in Sweden. I was like, I get why you're doing that, because it's a convenient solution. But is it really the most clever solution at that very place? And that's what I'm a bit debating. I think desalination is an engineering marvel. Don't get me wrong. It's incredible. You take water, regardless of its quality, regardless of its source, and you turn it into perfectly drinking water. And it's only done through mechanical step, which you can control at 100%.
Yep.
So as an engineer, pardon my French again, but it's porn. It's engineering porn. It's perfect. So I do get why engineers dream of that and do that. But still, maybe in many places in this world, if you go to more biological processes, to nature-based solutions, to watershed management, to an integrated solution, which means you have to give up some of the work and the heavy lifting to nature, which is quite difficult to do as an engineer, it's probably a better solution. So coming back to your crystal ball question, in the Middle East, you will see much more. And I think it's absolutely right. If in the US, they double up the desalination, well, aside from California, maybe, and still, if they were doing it, do you need to desalinate water to grow almonds in California? I'm not quite sure. It's very clever. But if you want to do so, who am I to judge? I'm just saying that maybe it makes sense in places, but not everywhere.
Okay.
What's your vision?
It will grow. It will grow definitely. It will grow also on other countries. North America is an example for that. We have Southern Europe, even there. Think about Spain. They are having lack of water. We have all the issues in Africa. Even there, it could be a solution, right? If you go the coast along. I'm not sure that that is a magic pill. But let's say it is a crucial part of the game to overcome. 300 million is nothing right now. And we will see 500, 600, I think, in the next decade.
I think they're doing a very good, that section of the industry is doing a very good lobby work.
Oh, yeah. And maybe that's one of the reasons why you see that all the time.
Yeah. Remember Aquatech? When we were at Aquatech, there were these presentations where they were saying,
the IEA.
If you desalinate water to water your tomatoes, then your tomatoes bring you $5 per cubic meter. Mm-hmm. And desalination costs, not your crazy numbers, but $2 or $2.2 per cubic meter, all included, or 2.4 or 2.5, but it is economic because you have a 50% margin. And they're like, okay, then if tomato, which is maybe the lowest grade thing you can do with the desalination water, is already economic, why don't we do it everywhere? The problem is that when you do that, you don't factor in the consequences, which we have a hard time quantifying, of what happens with the brines, what happens with the energy if we are putting it there, we're not putting it somewhere else. And when we are going to be in the middle of the winter here in Europe, and right now we have this energy crisis, which we do know, and you don't want the nuclear power because you're German.
I want a little bit.
You will have to decide if you go for drinking water or if you go for heating in your house, and all those parts are impossible to bring in a simple equation of how much does it cost, how much does it bring. And so that makes it more complex than what you hear people explaining you it is. And honestly, if you're a fan of desalination, don't take me wrong, you probably know much more about it than me, so come and correct me, but I think it's much more complex than just, it's a magical solution, let's take it.
Okay, we'll see. And 10 years from now, what is your prediction? We have now 300 million people served for that.
I would look in terms of percentage. We are serving 0.5 to 1% of the people. I would expect it to grow to even 3 or 4. So I'm saying a bigger increase than you. I would say it triple or even...
I mean, I'm just saying about next decade, right?
I think it really will triple up. But it will triple up. It will not take 100% or even fill the entire gap we are seeing. I think it's a conjunction of many more things. And there, to that extent, I'm not relying just on my very little expertise. I'm leveraging the studies of the OECD, the studies of the IMF, of the World Bank, which are saying, yes, it will go to 3 or 4%, but not 10 or 12 or 15%. That is all the technologies.
Okay, it's not the magic pill, but it's part of the solution. We can agree on that.
It's part of the solution.
That's what I'm saying.
It's part of the solution. Let's meet for the conclusion.
So I told you, desalination is really part of the game. Maybe it's not the magic pill, but it is at least a pill which can help to that people don't suffer that much anymore.
Yeah, but there's a difference between being the solution with a big T and being part of the solution. And I agree with you, it can be part of the solution, but it's not the solution.
Yeah, but it is one solution. And a very important one. My audience will prove you.
Your audience. Listen to that guy. You're his audience now. You're not my audience at all. You're his audience.
It's split it, right, between the French and the German part, and desalination and all the rest.
Okay, actually, he's right on something. We would be very happy to hear from you what you think about that topic, because we know that desalination is a topic which is close to the heart of many of the ones which are following us. So we're really looking forward to read what you have to think about the topic, because you probably are better experts than we are, probably than I am at least. So I have to say, I'm looking forward to seeing that. I was quite in agreement with your editorial, Björn. That doesn't happen that often.
As always you are agreeing somehow with me. I mean, we have proven that I'm not so wrong. Yes, but really we should think about that we as industry, we are serving another industry as well, and think about that. We will go to New York next year. Yeah,
United Nations, if you're watching that, and of course you're watching that, if you want to send us an invite, we would be happy to accept it and to come over. Sounds very, very, very selfish to say that way, but yeah, actually.
And finally, guys, tell this guy that he's wrong with all these biogas plants. He wants to establish everywhere, right? Please send all the comments directly to him that he is just talking in a different way next time. Thank you.
Biogas is the future of our industry. It will help us a lot to overcome the carbon issue, the energy issue. I'm not redoing all of that.
So we should go back to the meeting room. We should discuss again, right?
Okay, let's go back. Okay. But this time I kick your ass.
Thank you very much, guys. We love to hear you. Send us the comments and I will follow him to get him gone.